Namaste. We are considering the samyoga, the conjunction, the prakriti purusha samyoga, drashta drishya samyoga, which is also the cause of the avoidable, Duhkam, Duhkha Hetu, and therefore a question comes up, why at all then conjunction got in place? All the archetypal mind should have thought about not having this conjunction at all, so that there would have been no torment. But we have seen that that is not a right argument. Therefore the samyoga is inevitable and also not completely avoidable. So we are dealing with the sutra which tells us Swaswami Shaktyoho Swarupopalabdhi Hetu Samyogaha. The Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti, their samyoga. The samyoga is for what and why? It is not only for negative effects such as tormentation, harassment, problems, but also for apavarga. Without conjunction, you won't have even apavarga. It is not only the conjunction is only for Bhogam, but also for Apavargam. And therefore, the position that archetypal mind has a perfect plan and the conjunction is in place, the conjunction must be positively used rather than negatively suffered. So the conjunction is of the nature of what? Swami Shaktyoho Swarupopalabdhi Hetu Samyoga. The purpose, Hetu. What is the Hetu and purpose? Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti, that is Purusha Prakriti categories, their Swarupopalabdhi, and it is important to have Swarupopalabdhi, understand them essentially, quintessentially, and that is why the samyoga is there. Now, as we saw during the last session, Patanjali has used the word Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti, but denoting the conjunction of the Swa and Swami. So, why in simple words not mention just Swa Swami Samyogam, but why Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti Sanyogam? That is because the Bhogyatvam and Bhoktr, that conjunction is something that has to be considered. See, like when you are moving through very, very crowded streets, you will be contacted by and touched by so many people you don't bother about it. Because there is already a lot of crowd rush in the roads. And then when you are walking, you want to walk, and in process of very walking, you will brace so many people will brace you, but we don't really bother about such touches and contacts. But that is because that is samanya, that is quite general, that the road is crowded and therefore you are brushed by so many people and you are brushing so many people. But that is not really considered to be objectionable touch or contact. There is something else which becomes objectionable touch and contact. So the Samanya Samyoga is not matter to be investigated or interrogated or set aside. You cannot even set aside. So the Akasha, which is all pervasive, is touching everything in the universe. Nothing is untouched by space. But then that is samanya sambandham, and samanya sambandham, general or generic kind of touch and contact, is not objectionable. But the particular kind of touch and contact can be objected to. So Vishesha Sambandham is something that is objectionable and not the Samanya Sambandham. So what is being mentioned here is the Prakriti is all pervasive. Maybe in some philosophies Atma itself is all pervasive. So if there is all pervasive one factor or both the factors, the touch is inevitable. But that is not objectionable. That is quite natural. It is inevitable. It cannot be set aside. So in case only one of the two is all pervasive, still it is inevitable, like space. The space is all pervasive and therefore it is touching all the objects, everything in the universe. So we have to understand Samanya Sambandham and Vishesha Sambandham. And what is being mentioned here is Vishesha Sambandham. Because the Sambandham of the Bhogyatvam and Bhoktr, therefore it becomes something that should be considered. So Patanjali is telling us that it is not drashta drushya samyogam, but the Swaswami Shakti Sambandham, which is to be considered here. And this conjunction is for what purpose? The specific, typical, special conjunction is for what purpose? Swa Shakti Swarupopalabdhi and Swami Shakti Swarupopalabdhi. This is Viveka Khyati. In other words, this is Viveka Khyati. And Viveka Khyati is not Heyapaks, it is Upadeya Paksha. It is accepted, it is sought after, it must be sought after. And that is why the conjunction is for both negative and positive purposes, benedictory purpose and malifying purpose. And therefore there can be no position held that why at all the conjunction, because the conjunction is dual-headed. It has both a bounty as well as a malignant aspect, troublesome aspect, problematic aspect. So that's why that question has been set aside. Now, the Bhoktr and Bhogyatvam. Now, this conjunction is going to give realization, revelation, intuitive mystic revelation of the Bhogya Shakti and Bhoktritva Shakti. And then that will be Viveka Khyati, and that Viveka Khyati will be means for liberation, Kaivalyam. So we will have to understand the Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti. The mention here comes in Sutra in the light of another fact, that in deluge, or what is called as Pralaya Avastha, there is no seer and there is no seen, because it's a nominal state. Pralaya Avastha is a nominal state. There is nothing to be seen, and if there is nothing to be seen, there is not even a seer. So the conjunction is not with drashta and drushya, because then that won't be there in deluge, or what is called as dissolution or pralayam. And therefore he has used the word Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti. The potentiality of Swa and potentiality of the Swami, potentiality of the seen and potentiality of seer. This conjunction will be there even in pralayam, even in dissolution, even in nominal state of deluge. That is why he has used the word Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti. That is capacity, and the Bhogyatvam and Bhogyatvam therefore arises while it is Sargavastha. Now what is Bhoktritvam, or what is Bhogyatvam? Bhogyatvam means capacity of being experienced, and Bhoktritvam is capacity of enduring and experiencing. So the latter one is always with the sentient and the former is always with the insentient. Capacity of being experienced is always in Prakriti, which is insentient, which is Jada. And capacity of experiencing is always with sentient principle, Purusha Tattva, Atma Tattva. And then that is Samyoga Vishesham. So with the Bhogyata and Bhoktritvam in place, when there is a conjunction, that conjunction is something that should be taken into account. Like as I said, when you are in a crowded street, so many people are brushing you and you are brushing them, there is no objection taken. But somebody touching you with some intent, then that has to be considered. That is called specific contact. A specific contact is always subjected to investigation, interrogation and consideration. Whether it is acceptable or not acceptable, whether acceptable or rejectable. So that is about the specific conjunction, specific contacts which come about. But the general contacts and general associations which come about, we don't really subject them to this inquiry, investigation or assessment. So the Purusha becomes Bhokta because of this specific conjunction, and the Prakriti becomes Bhogyam because of specific conjunction. I recall a statement from Kathopanishad 1.3.4. Atmendriya mano yuktam bhokta iti ahu manishinaha. Atmendriya mano yuktam. That is Bhoktritvam. When Atma and Indriya with mind together, they come together, so that becomes a specific contact and it gives you experience of pain or pleasure, delight or sorrow. And that is called Bhogam, and then the Purusha gets the Bhoktritvam and the Prakriti gets the Bhogyatvam. So the Kathopanishad says, when the self is in conscious union with senses and body, the wise call that as experiencer, Bhokta. Now, when we are fast asleep in unconscious state, we are in our body, but there is no specific contact of the Atma with Indriya or Atma with Manas. It is because of dreamless sleep or because of unconscious state. So although there is a physical contact, that contact is not the Vishesha Samyogam but Samanya Samyogam. And that doesn't give Bhoktritvam. That's why in dreamless sleep you don't experience, in unconscious state you don't experience. Although there is a conjunction, they are not separated. The conjunction is yet there, but the conjunction is general. So specific conjunction gives bhoktritvam and bhogyatvam. Anyway, now let's try to understand the sutra. The Swa Shakti in the sutra is Drushya category. The Swami Shakti in the sutra is Drashta category. So Swa Shakti is entire seen category, and Swami Shakti comes for the seer category. And when Bhogya Shakti and Bhoktr Shakti is attained, Bhoktritvam and Bhogyatvam is attained, that is Bhogya Shakti and Bhoktritva Shakti is attained, then there is that special Samyogam, that is Vishesha Samyogam. Otherwise, general Samyoga, as I said earlier, it also exists in Pralayavastha. There the Bhoktritvam and Bhogyatvam is Anupalabdha, while otherwise it is Upalabdha. In conscious state, it is Upalabdha. In unconscious state, in the dormant state, it is Anupalabdha. So that also in Pralayavastha, it is Anupalabdha. So the conjunction should have Upalabdhi and not mere conjunction, because the conjunction is of two kinds, where Bhoktr Shakti, Bhogya Shakti, Upalabdhatvam is there, and at the same also alternately Bhogyatvam, Bhoktritvam, Anupalabdhi is there. The attaining Bhoktritvam, Bhogyatvam is a matter that has to be considered, but where the Bhogyatvam, Bhoktritvam is not attained despite the conjunction, that need not be considered. And that therefore is a general Samyoga, and that is not Samyoga as such. Although it is a general Samyoga which is inevitable, inescapable. So, this Vishesha Samyoga gives a Sannidhi between Purusha Tattva and Prakriti Tattva, Drushya Tattva and Drashta Tattva. There comes the Sannidhi, proximity, and therefore the Bhogya Bhava and Bhoktr Bhava appear. They become Upalabdha, they become attainable, they are there. So Drushya has the Bhogya Shakti and Drashta has Bhoktr Shakti. It is because of the conjunction in specific way, special way. And therefore the word Swa Shakti and Swami Shakti, Upalabdhi. In the sutra, Swami Shaktyoho Swarupopalabdhi Hetu Samyogaha. So, the Drashta Bhava and Drushya Bhava appear with this conjunction. The Bhogyatvam, Bhoktritvam come about by this conjunction. The Swa Shakti, Swami Shakti, Upalabdhi comes by this conjunction. And therefore Swarupopalabdhi has been mentioned in the sutra. Overall or totally, in all, Patanjali is mentioning Swami Samyoga by way of Swa Shakti, Swami Shakti Samyoga, which is very, very reasonable and very apt and very precise, very faultless. Otherwise, Swami Sambandham would be not precise statement of the fact, statement of the reality. Because the Sargavastha and Pralayavastha have to be considered. And considering Sargavastha, Pralayavastha, creative phase and deluge phase, he has used the word potentiality. which is absolutely perfect. So, this is the conjunction which is going to give the Swarupopalabdhi of Swa-Shakti and Swami Shakti. Without that, it won't be coming about. Because without that, there will be no vritti. Now, if there is no chitta vritti, it won't be either klishta or aklishta. Now, you need to have aklishta chitta vritti for Viveka Khya. So, there will be no vritti coming up at all without this conjunction. We must have this vritti. And this vritti of the nature of Viveka Khya entails that there must be this specific conjunction. And that is why it is there and it has been mentioned. So, if the conjunction is not there, you not only would not get klishta vritti, but you would not also get aklishta vritti. Now, this is not desirable in spiritual pursuit. In spiritual pursuit, you don't want klishta vritti, but you want aklishta vritti. But in absence of conjunction, there will be neither klishta vritti nor aklishta vritti, and therefore it won't be desirable. So, anyway, now let us try to understand the deeper purport of the sutra by looking at Vyasa's commentary. So, Vyasa commences by mentioning the meaning of the sutra. Purusha Swamihi Drushyena Svena Darshanartham Samyuktaha. So, what is this Swami Shakti? Swami Shakti is Purusha Tattvam. So, he makes it clear, explicit. Purusha Swamihi Drushyattvena Svena Darshanartham Samyuktaha. To have realization of one's own essential nature, there has to be this conjunction and darshanam. So that is what is made clear by Vyasa. That means he says the Swami, that is the Purusha, gets united with the Swa, which is his own buddhi, for the sake of darshanam, darshanartha. He gets the conjunction. Darshanam means what darshanam? That is the Sattva Purusha Anyatha Khyati Darshanam, Viveka Khyati Darshanam. So, without that, there would be no Viveka Khyati coming up. And that's why he says the Purusha gets united with it, which is Swa-Shakti. So what happens by this conjunction? Tasmat sanyogat drishyasya upalabdhir yasa bhogaha. So by this conjunction, the jnana comes up. And what kind of jnana? The drishyopalabdhi, drishya swarupopalabdhi. That is what is really the state of this seen category, the quintessential state of the seen category. And when that comes, that is Bhogam. That is called Bhogam. So this is one consequence of conjunction, is that the Bhoga comes up. He knows that the Swam is happy, Swam is sorrow, in sorrowfulness. The Swa is delighted, Swa is in sorrowfulness. So that knowledge about the Buddhi Tattvam, which is in the influence of Sattva Raja Tamo Gunas, Shanta Ghora Mudhavastha. So when that state of the Drishya is known to the Purusha, that is called Bhogam. Tasmat sanyoga drishyasya upalabdhirya sabhogaha. So when the drishya is understood, which is always in some state shanta ghora mood, so that becomes bhogam. Yatu drashtu swarupopalabdhi so apavargaha. When the Purusha or the Swami gets to know his own state, that is Apavarga. Say, in case of mirror, mirror is object of knowledge in two ways. If you hold the mirror in front of you, your eyes, the mirror is object in two ways. One is that it will show your reflection and your appearance, that is one. Secondly, the mirror will show itself as to how the mirror is. So very interesting thing here to be understood, that when you are looking into mirror which is hung on a wall in your house, you don't look at the mirror, you look at the reflection that comes in the mirror. Your reflection, which is cast by the mirror, is the object. But when you are going to a shop and want to buy a mirror, new mirror, you try to make the mirror as an object, how the mirror is. So, when the mirror shows itself, it is one kind of object. But when the mirror is showing your reflection, it is another kind of object. So, the mirror has two functions. One is that it make the reflected as an object, which it casts reflection back. And then mirror itself can be an object. So when you buy a new mirror, you want to buy a new mirror which is without contortion, without distortion, etc., etc. Otherwise it would give disfiguration of your image if the mirror is contorted. So looking at the mirror becomes object. But then looking at the reflection again, you have to look at the mirror. Without looking at the mirror, you won't get the reflection of your appearance. So similarly here, when the drashta is looking at the mirror, then that is called bhogam. When drashta is getting his own reflection in the mirror, looking at the reflection and gets to know that this is how I am, that is Apavargam. And that is why Yatu drashtu Swarupopalabdhi so Apavargaha. Then the Purusha understands, I am totally different than Prakriti. I am totally different than the seen category. The seen category is mutable. Seen category can be dented, can be tainted. But I am totally transcendent. And that is Apavarga. So that's why the example of mirror I gave you. You can see the mirror by looking at the mirror, which you do that when you are going to buy a mirror. Whether the mirror is clean, whether the mirror is spotless, are there any spots in the mirror? Because you don't want to buy the mirror which has spots in it. So, looking at the mirror to buy a mirror is one thing, and looking into the mirror for your own reflection is another purpose of mirror. So similarly, the drashta, when he looks at buddhi, that becomes bhogam, that it is shanta avastha, ghora avastha, mood avastha, satvik avastha, rajasik avastha, tamasik avastha, painful, pleasurable, delightful, sorrowful, etc. So that is bhogam. But when he gets his own darshanam, Swami darshanam, then that is Apavarga. So there are two cases here. One is Swa Shakti Swarupopalabdhi and Swami Shakti Swarupopalabdhi. So like I explained with the help of mirror, it should be understood here. And this only happens with samyogam. If there is no samyoga, neither of the cases would happen. So one gives apavarga, which is sattva purusha anyata khyati, and the other one gives vritti sarupyam, which is bhogam. Now this samyoga is terminating when there is Viveka Khyati. Until Viveka Khyati, conjunction is needed and conjunction will be there. Both. It will be there and it is needed very much. But when the Swarupopalabdhi takes place, then there will be Viyogam. And then that will be emancipation and Kaivalyam. Now this samyoga is anadikalina. But although it is anadi, it is not ananta. Very strangely, it is anadi but santa. It can end. When will it end? With what is called as karyavasanam. When the purpose is accomplished, the conjunction too will come to an end. And this comes to an end with aviplavita viveka khyati. Thereafter, this will not be there. The samyoga, the basis for samyoga will be removed, withdrawn. And that's why Vyasa says, darshana karyavasanaha samyoga iti darshana viyogasya karanam muktam. So there will be darshana karyavasanam, that means accomplishment of darshana karyam. That is called jnanodaya, vivekodaya, viveka khyati udaya, sattva purushannata khyati udaya. Dawn of essential knowledge, dawn of quintessential self-knowledge, the dawn of discriminative discernment, dawn of sattva purushannata khyati. Until that time, there is purpose for samyoga. And when that is not there, the purpose for samyoga is gone. And therefore, the Viveka Khyati is said to be Viyoga Karanam. It will effect end of conjunction once the Viveka Khyati is had, what is called as spiritual samambonam. The Viveka Khyati gives what is called as kritakrityata, absolute accomplishment, absolute sense of accomplishment, a final state of accomplishment. And therefore there won't be any prayojanam. The purpose would be lost. When the purpose is accomplished, the purpose ends. This is what happens in spiritual realm. In material realm, there is a purpose, purpose ends, new purpose comes up. That purpose ends, a new purpose comes up. That too ends, another purpose will come up. So, you have purpose of becoming millionaire. Once you become millionaire, you have the purpose of becoming billionaire. When that purpose too is served, then you have purpose of becoming a trillionaire. When that purpose too is served, then you have a purpose of becoming quadrillionaire, etc. And then it is endless. But in spiritual realm, it is not that way. Once you realize the self, the purpose is accomplished absolutely. There won't be new purpose coming up because there is no new purpose at all. That is called avasana prapti. That is Swarupopalabdhi. So Swarupopalabdhi is Viveka Khyati and that is Paryavasanam or Avasana Prapti. that is paryavasanam of the upalabdhi or purpose. So Vyasa has brought the word or concept called darshanam. The darshanam means this vivekodaya, jnanodaya, attaining the ultimate stage of knowledge. That is called darshanam. And therefore, once the darshanam comes up, adarshanam goes away. Adarshanam goes away. And therefore, Vyasa clearly mentions darshanam adarshanasya pratidvandvi iti adarshanam samyoga nimittam uktam. Therefore, adarshanam is the cause of samyogam, because darshanam is going to remove the samyoga, end the samyoga. Therefore, it is becoming viyoga karanam. And therefore, adarshanam means avidya. In simpler words, avidya is adarshanam, and darshanam is Viveka Khyati, penultimate pinnacle of knowledge, jnanam. And therefore he says the darshanam is pratidvandvi of adarshanam. And now there won't be any pratidvandvi, there won't be anything as a counterpart. So darshanopalabdhi results into end of adarshanam. So Patanjali is not, Patanjali is not implying adarshanopalabdhi, but darshanopalabdhi. This should be understood, though. So the concept of darshanam will become clear. Now, if it is posited that Viveka Khyati gives moksham, then it should be understood, no, it doesn't happen directly like that. That Viveka Khyati has dawned and then you get the moksham. Because even after darshanantaram, after the darshana is had, Viveka Khyati is attained, the sanyoga bhava has to go. The conjunction has to go. So merely having Viveka Khyati itself is not kaivalyam. Thereafter there has to be a further process of sanyoga bhavaha, the end of conjunction, that has to come about. And then that is moksha. Therefore, Vyasa clearly mentions, na atra darshanam moksha karanam uktam. Merely darshanam is not moksha karanam. There is something else has to happen after darshanam, that is attaining Viveka Khyati. If you say the moksha comes up with Viveka Khyati, that means moksha becomes effect. Now this is not a tenable condition. If, as a common man would believe that when you get Viveka Khyati, then you get moksham. If you get moksham, that means it is effect, and if it is effect, it is impermanent. It won't be everlasting, because effects are never ever lasting. So, therefore, Vyasa makes a clear statement, na atra darshanam moksha karanam uktam. Darshanam is not declared as moksha karanam, because then moksha has a cause, and therefore moksha becomes effect. And if moksha is an effect, it is always impermanent. The effects are never permanent. The karya is never permanent. And therefore this explicit statement has come in Vyasa's commentary, which is very important. So there is nothing like mokshotpatti. Liberation doesn't come about liberation is not effect of something. Something doesn't result into liberation or salvation or emancipation. In that case, all those emancipations or salvations or liberations would become effects. And if they are effects, they have a cause. And therefore, the effect is always dependent on the cause. And therefore, the defect will not be permanent thing. So, Vyasa comes to postulate that moksham is not something which comes about. Liberation is not something that comes about. This is very important to be noted. Otherwise, generally we will get the idea that we do something, we do some upasana, brahmopasana, atmopasana, and Viveka Khya sadhana, Viveka comes and you get liberated. So liberation becomes effect, and this is untenable. So that is why Vyasa is now opening out a topic for discussion here as to what is really moksha, liberation, salvation, emancipation. Is it something that comes about due to something? That means is it effect of something? And this is philosophically untenable position, because the effects are never permanent. They are cause dependent. So they are not independent, they are dependent. And this is really untenable. And therefore, very interesting topic opens out. Otherwise, naive seekers in a paramarthik adhyatmic path, they think the moksha is to be attained, liberation is to be attained, salvation is to be attained, or something gives salvation, something results into salvation, emancipation, moksham. Then that would become effect. And effects are impermanent. That what is really moksha? So moksha, is it something that what you have goes away? Or all that you have goes away and you are liberated? Or altogether new comes in, that therefore you are liberated? What is it? So everything going away from you, that will be extinction of yourself. You won't remain. If everything that you have now has to go away, that means you yourself will also go away. Now this is not expected in liberation, that yourself should be lost. You should be lost. Now such moksha nobody would be seeking. That if it is going to be your own extinction, then you won't be desiring for it. Or is it that all that you have should go away, which just as we saw, it is not terrible. Is it that something altogether new which you don't have has to come? That also is not proper position. It is also untenable. Altogether new coming in is also not tenable, and all that you have should go away is also not tenable. So what is this moksha is really requiring a philosophical inquiry. Otherwise, generally it is believed that the moksha happens, moksha comes, somebody gets moksha. You will get moksha. If you are getting moksha, you always get what you don't have. That means something is causing liberation. If something is causing liberation, then that is untenable philosophically. So very important philosophical matter is coming on the anvil. What is really moksha? Getting rid of all that you have, or getting something that you never had so far? What is really the moksha? What is the moksha commodity? Is it something new that is coming up for once and for the first time? Or is it getting rid of all that you have and therefore you will be emancipated? What is it? So very interesting topic of investigation is coming up. So we will be considering that, but that is in our next session. Enough for the time being. Namaskar.